If you're new to AskReddit cheating drama, make sure to subscribe and like the video. It only takes a few seconds, but it really motivates us to create more crazy cheating stories. Now, let's get into the story. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals aren't screamed across a room. They're whispered in quiet spaces, behind eyes that stopped meeting, and in beds where love once bloomed, but now only echoes. This is the story of Emma. A woman who lost herself somewhere between routine and resentment, whose longing for connection led her down a path she never thought she'd take. A path of desire, guilt, heartbreak, and a child born of everything broken. It's not a love story, and it's not a tragedy. It's what happens when silence becomes unbearable, when choices ripple far beyond a single night, and when a woman must face the consequences of not just who she loved, but who she stopped being. This is a story about the cost of emotional betrayal, the weight of motherhood, and the quiet resilience it takes to rebuild after everything falls apart. This is what remains. I used to count the minutes until Mark came home. Now I count how long he can sit next to me in silence before checking his phone. We've been married for 11 years, long enough for strangers to say, "You're lucky," and friends to assume we had it all figured out. They don't see how Mark doesn't look at me the way he used to, or how I've stopped expecting him to. Mark is a good man. At least, that's what I remind myself every time the house feels too quiet. He's loyal. He provides. He doesn't cheat, doesn't drink, doesn't raise his voice, but sometimes the absence of violence is mistaken for love. And silence? Silence can be the loudest kind of heartbreak. He's an engineer. Logical, methodical, precise. He comes home at 6:15, eats in silence, showers, and falls asleep by 10 o'clock. We talk in routines. "Did you pay the mortgage? Don't forget your appointment next week. Emma, can you grab milk on the way back?" He calls me Em out of habit, not tenderness. I used to wear perfume before he got home. Now I don't even change out of my work clothes. Last month, on our anniversary, I made dinner. Candles. Real ones, not the scented crap I usually light to cover up the smell of the dog. I wore a red dress I hadn't touched in years. When he walked in, he blinked like the light had startled him. "Is someone coming over?" he asked. That was his first sentence to me that evening. He ate in silence. Didn't even notice the wine was from our honeymoon in Napa. After dinner, he kissed my cheek like he was punching a time card. I started going on more walks. At first, I told myself it was for my health. But really, I just needed the wind in my face. Something unpredictable. Something that reminded me I was still here, still someone, not just his wife or this house's keeper. That's when I saw Tyler again. He was jogging past our street, earbuds in, shirt clinging to his chest. I hadn't seen him in months, maybe more. He waved, smiled, kept going. Mark's best friend from college. They used to be inseparable. The kind of friendship that could survive dorm parties, cross-country moves, and even bachelorhood. Tyler was the charming one. Funny, spontaneous, always with some outrageous story. He used to flirt with me. Harmlessly. Mark would roll his eyes and laugh. I'd blush and play along. It never meant anything, not then. But that day, when he waved and smiled like I hadn't disappeared into a shell of myself, I felt something shift. A week later, I ran into him again. This time, he stopped. "Emma?" "Tyler. Wow. You look good." It wasn't the words. It was the way he said them. Like he meant it. Like he saw me. Not the version I present to the world, not the wife, not the mother of routines, but me. We talked. Not long. But long enough for me to forget what time it was. Long enough for me to realize I missed being heard. When I came home, Mark didn't ask where I'd been. Of course he didn't. He never asks anymore. We talked for an hour. Then 2. I told him about my job, how I was managing a small nonprofit that no one really cared about except me. He listened. Really listened, without checking a phone or glancing past me like Mark often did. When I laughed at one of his stories, he grinned and said, "God, I missed that sound." I felt my cheeks flush. He didn't say anything inappropriate, not yet, but something was there. Something electric, low humming beneath every word. We started texting, just casual at first. Memes, articles, inside jokes from years ago. Then it turned into, "Can't stop thinking about our coffee yesterday," and "You looked beautiful today, by the way." And then, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd met me first?" That was the night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Mark, who was snoring softly, and stared at the ceiling. Tyler's words echoed in my chest. If you'd met me first. It was a silly idea, a fantasy. But I let myself live in it, just for a moment. A world where I wasn't invisible, where someone looked at me and didn't see laundry or bills or meal plans, but saw me, messy, aching, alive. I started walking every afternoon, knowing Tyler might just happen to be out too. Sometimes we only talked for 5 minutes. Sometimes we sat in his car, parked under the giant oak tree near the park, and talked until the sky turned pink. There was never a plan, we just kept falling. One afternoon, it rained. A sudden, warm summer downpour. I ducked into his car, soaked, laughing, water dripping from my hair. He handed me a towel. Our fingers touched, just briefly, but in that tiny touch, I felt everything we'd been holding back. I looked up. He was already watching me. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered. "I know," he said. We sat in silence for a full minute, rain tapping the windshield like a heartbeat. Then he leaned in, slow, cautious. He was giving me time to pull away. I didn't. When our lips met, it was soft, gentle, like an apology wrapped in longing. I didn't go home right away. When I finally walked through the door, my hair still damp, Mark was on his laptop. "You're late," he said. "Got caught in the rain," I replied. He nodded, without looking up. That was the moment I knew. I could have told him everything right then, and he still wouldn't have seen me. That kiss broke something open in me, and once it was open, I couldn't shut it again. We didn't sleep together. Not yet. But the emotional line had already been crossed. We started texting at night, little confessions, pieces of ourselves. Sometimes we'd delete the messages immediately after sending them, pretending we hadn't said what we did. Other times, we saved them, like souvenirs from a place that didn't exist. One night, Tyler texted, "I think I'm falling for you." My hands shook. I didn't reply for 20 minutes. When I did, all I wrote was, "Don't." But what I really meant was, "Me too." It was supposed to be a goodbye. That's what I told myself when I asked to see him again. Alone, not at the park, not in his car. A real place. A clean break. One last time. Tyler booked a hotel room, neutral ground. A place without memories, without expectations. I wore a coat over a dress I hadn't worn since before Mark and I stopped touching each other. I don't even remember applying makeup. My hands moved on autopilot, like I was preparing someone else for the night ahead. When I walked in, Tyler stood by the window, his back to me. "Emma," he said, turning. There was something raw in his voice, like he'd been holding his breath since the last time we kissed. Maybe I had too. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered. "I know," he said. "You keep saying that." He stepped toward me, slowly, as if he were afraid I might disappear. I didn't. We didn't talk much. Our mouths had other things to say. There was no rush, no tearing of clothes, no desperate fumbling. It was soft, careful, like we were memorizing each other, inch by inch, like we both knew we would pay for this and wanted it to be worth every breath. His hands on my waist felt reverent, like worship. He kissed my neck like he was searching for the parts of me that had been forgotten, and when he looked into my eyes, he didn't look away. Afterwards, I lay against his chest, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. "I'm scared," I admitted. My voice was a ghost in the quiet. "Of what?" he asked. "Of what I just did. Of what this means. Of going home." He ran his fingers through my hair. We don't have to define anything tonight. Just be here for now. But now is a dangerous place to live. It tricks you into thinking it's safe, just because it feels good. Weeks passed. We didn't meet again. But we didn't stop. We texted. We called. We lived for the few minutes between obligations, a look across a room, a hand on a lower back, a whisper that meant more than an entire conversation. I told myself it was just emotional, a lapse. But my body knew better. Then came the late period. I didn't panic at first. Cycles shift. Stress does things. But when 2 pink lines showed up on the test in the downstairs bathroom, something inside me collapsed. I stared at it for a long time. Then I took another and another. 3 positives, 3 echoes of a mistake I couldn't undo. Mark was out of town for a work retreat. I had 4 nights alone to unravel. I didn't call Tyler right away. I didn't even know what to say. What kind of sentence begins with, "I think I'm pregnant and it's not my husband's"? When I finally told him, it wasn't in person. It was a text. A photo of the test. No words. Just the truth. He called immediately. "Emma, are you okay?" "I don't know." A pause. "Do you want to keep it?" he asked softly. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was that I hadn't felt this alive in years, and that terrified me. Mark came home Sunday night. I made dinner like nothing happened. He kissed my cheek, like always. "Everything okay?" he asked, and I said, "Yeah, just tired." That night, I lay beside him, one hand on my stomach, wondering what would happen if the truth ever made it past my lips. But the thing about secrets, they don't stay quiet forever. And some of them grow inside you, every single day. I never thought a secret could have a heartbeat, but mine did, 6 weeks, then 8. I watched the days tick by in quiet dread, waiting for something, anything, to tell me what to do. A sign, a collapse, a confession, but life just went on. Mark didn't notice, or maybe he did, but chose not to ask. He'd gotten used to my silences. I'd gotten used to being invisible. I started going to the bathroom with the door locked, started wearing looser clothes, started avoiding mirrors and my husband's eyes. At work, I smiled at the right times, answered emails, went to meetings, all while my body hummed with a truth I couldn't say out loud. I was carrying a child, not Mark's, and I didn't know how long I could hide it. Tyler wanted to talk, really talk. He asked if we could meet somewhere quiet. No hotel, no hiding, just us. I said yes. We met at a park near the edge of town. It was gray out, windy, the kind of afternoon that makes you feel like something's about to break. He brought coffee. I couldn't drink mine. I couldn't stop shaking. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said. "I'm thinking my life is unraveling." He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "No one ever does," I said. A pause, then his voice, soft but steady. "I'll be there. If you want this child, I'll show up. I won't run." I looked at him, and for a second I wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe that we could rewrite the story somehow, make it beautiful, make it whole. But fairy tales don't start with betrayal, and babies don't fix broken things. They only make the cracks louder. I thought I could keep pretending. Thought I had more time. But the universe doesn't let you lie for long. It started with a dinner. Mark's boss. Some client. I barely remember. I wore a black dress, the only one that still fit. I told myself it wasn't noticeable, that no one would see what I was hiding beneath the fabric and the forced smiles. But Mark looked at me across the table, like he was seeing something unfamiliar, like I was a word in a sentence that didn't belong. Later, in the car, he asked, "Are you feeling okay?" "Yeah, just tired," I said, my new favorite lie. He looked like he wanted to say more, but as usual, he didn't. A week later, I threw up in the upstairs bathroom. I didn't have time to hide it. Mark heard. He knocked gently. "Emma?" I flushed the toilet, ran cold water. My hands were shaking. "Bad chicken," I lied through the door. He paused, then, "You've been off lately." "I'm fine." Silence. When I opened the door, he was still standing there. His eyes searched mine, really searched. And for a moment, I thought maybe he knew, but all he said was, "You look pale." Then he walked away. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, one hand on my stomach, the other clenched into a fist. How do you tell your husband that his best friend gave you something he never could? How do you say, "I was so lonely I forgot who I was, and now someone else lives inside me"? Guilt has a smell. It smells like clean sheets, untouched wine glasses, and quiet rooms. It smells like perfume you haven't worn in months because you don't know who you're dressing up for anymore. It sits in your lungs and makes it hard to breathe. The next morning, I found Mark in the kitchen. He was drinking coffee, reading an article on his phone. I stood there for a long moment, watching him. He looked older, tired, but still, him. The man I once loved so wildly I would have followed him anywhere. The man who stopped seeing me. Or maybe I stopped letting him. "I need to talk to you," I said. He looked up, surprised. "Okay," he replied, slow. "What's going on?" My mouth opened. Nothing came out. So I said the only thing I could manage. "I think I'm pregnant." His coffee cup froze mid-air. He blinked. "Think?" he echoed. "Emma, what?" "I'm pregnant." Silence. The kind that felt like it would never end. Mark didn't say anything for a long time. He sat at the kitchen table, his fingers curled tightly around his coffee cup. Not drinking, not moving, just staring at me, through me. "Pregnant," he repeated. One word, so quiet it felt like thunder. I nodded, barely. "And it's mine?" It was a question, but it wasn't. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. "Emma." His voice was sharp this time, a crack in the calm, a warning. "Is it mine?" And just like that, I shattered. "No." The word fell from my lips like a stone, heavy, irrevocable. Mark stood slowly. His face was blank, controlled. "Whose?" he asked. I didn't answer. Not right away. I couldn't. He took a step toward me, then another. "Whose child are you carrying, Emma?" I whispered it. A name that had once meant nothing but friendship, now laced with betrayal. "Tyler." His reaction wasn't what I expected. No yelling, no plate thrown against the wall, just stillness. A kind that scared me more than rage ever could. He blinked once, then again, like the word didn't register. Then he laughed. A short, broken sound. "Tyler," he repeated. "My best friend. My best fucking friend." He sat back down, slowly, as if his legs had betrayed him. I wanted to say something. Anything. "I didn't mean—" "Don't," he snapped. "Don't say that. You don't get to mean anything anymore." His voice shook, but his hands stayed still. Too still. "How long?" "Mark, how long?" I swallowed. "Since June." He closed his eyes, pressed his palms together like a prayer or a plea. "You've been lying to me for months." I nodded, ashamed, numb. "And him?" he asked. "What is he to you? A mistake? A fantasy? Something you could bury in the dark and come home to me with clean hands?" I couldn't answer, because he was all of those things, and none of them. "You know," Mark said quietly, "I always thought if this marriage ended, it would be my fault." His voice cracked on the word marriage. "I worked too much. I stopped talking. I stopped trying." He looked up at me. His eyes were glassy now, but hard. But this? This is something else. The silence between us felt like a graveyard. He stood, walked to the sink, and rinsed his cup like it was any other morning, like the world hadn't just ended. Are you keeping it? I don't know, I whispered. Right, he said. Because now I'm just one more person you don't know how to tell the truth to. I followed him upstairs, needing to say something, to explain, to apologize. But what do you say when you've broken the only thing that ever truly loved you? He opened the bedroom closet, pulled down a suitcase. My heart dropped. Wait, Mark, what are you doing? Leaving. Where? Somewhere that isn't here. I don't care. Just away. Please, can we just talk? He zipped the suitcase and turned to me. We are talking. For the first time in months. But it's too fucking late, Emma. As he walked past me, he stopped at the door. One day, he said without looking back, you're going to look at that child and see every lie you ever told reflected in their eyes. And I hope, for their sake, that you learn how to live with it. Because I can't. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut. And I collapsed. On the stairs. On the floor. Inside myself. I had lost him. Not just the man, but the us we used to be. And the worst part wasn't that he left. It was that I had made it so easy for him to go. After Mark left, the silence wasn't just quiet. It was cruel. I walked through the house like a ghost. His toothbrush was still in the holder, his shoes by the door, a folded shirt on the dresser, waiting for a body that wouldn't return. The smell of his cologne lingered longer than I expected. Some nights, I sat on the edge of the bed just to feel closer to where he used to sleep. Guilt doesn't knock. It just moves in. I didn't answer Tyler's calls for 3 days. I couldn't. The truth was too raw, too fresh. Every time I saw his name flash across my phone screen, I wanted to throw it across the room. Because it wasn't just Mark's life I had broken. It was mine. On the 4th night, Tyler showed up at my door. I almost didn't open it. When I did, he was standing there with groceries in one hand and flowers in the other, drenched in guilt and concern. I brought food, he said quietly. I figured you probably hadn't eaten. He wasn't wrong. I let him in. We ate in the kitchen, quiet, careful. He didn't ask about Mark. I didn't offer. But after the dishes were cleared, he looked at me, really looked, and said, "Tell me what you need." I laughed, bitter, hollow. I don't even know what I need. I want to help, he said. I shook my head. This isn't a rescue, Tyler. There's no saving me. He reached for my hand. I let him. I don't want to save you, he said. I just want to stay. He stayed that night, not in my bed, but on the couch. He didn't ask for anything, and maybe that's why I let him stay, not out of love, but out of fear that if he left too, I'd vanish completely. The days blurred. I went to my first doctor's appointment alone. He, or she, was the size of a blueberry. A heartbeat flickered on the screen. Fast, fragile, real. I cried in the parking lot for 30 minutes. Not because I was happy, not because I was sad, but because this tiny life inside me hadn't asked for any of this. Tyler offered to come with me to the next appointment. I told him no. He didn't argue. Whatever you need, he said again. Always that. Always too kind. It should have made me feel safe. But instead, it made me feel like I didn't deserve it. Mark didn't call, didn't text. I sent one message after 2 weeks. I'm sorry. He didn't respond. I didn't send another. One night, Tyler made dinner, lit candles, played music, tried to make the world feel normal again. He leaned across the table and said, "We could do this, you know, you and me. We could raise this baby." I looked at him, really looked. The man who had once been a spark in a dark place, the man whose touch reminded me I was still a woman. But now, he was a reminder of everything I'd lost. And the truth was, I didn't love him. Not like that. Not enough. I can't promise you something I don't feel, I whispered. His smile faltered, but he nodded. Okay, he said. I still want to be there, even if you never love me back. And maybe that was the cruelest part, because in another life, I might have said yes. That night, I stood in the mirror and looked at my body. The curve of my belly had started to show, tiny, subtle, but enough to remind me, every morning, that the future was coming whether I wanted it or not. I touched the skin gently. This wasn't your fault, I whispered to the life inside me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace, not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of it. It was raining again when Mark came back. 3 weeks since he walked out. 23 days of silence. And then, suddenly, there he was, standing on the porch with his hands in his jacket pockets and his eyes fixed on the door like it still belonged to him. I watched him through the peephole for almost a full minute before I opened it. Hi, he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. Hi, I echoed. My hand gripped the edge of the door like I needed to hold on to something. He looked tired, not just physically, soul-tired, like something in him had worn thin. I didn't come to fight, he said. I don't have any fight left in me, I replied. We sat in the living room, both on opposite couches. The distance between us was only 10 feet. It felt like 10 years. He stared at the coffee table. I stared at him. So, I said, because silence was unbearable. Why now? He ran a hand through his hair, the same nervous tick he had when we were dating. I don't know, he said. I guess I kept waiting for the anger to go away, for it to stop feeling like a fire in my chest. And did it? He looked up at me. No, but it turned into something else. I waited. He took a breath, held it, released it slowly. I started thinking about us, before everything. His voice cracked. I wasn't there for you, Em. I haven't been there for a long time. You were right to feel alone. Mark, I'm not saying this to excuse what happened. I'm saying it because I don't know if I ever told you how sorry I am for disappearing before you ever touched him. That made me cry. Quiet, careful tears, the kind you don't even feel falling until they're already on your skin. Because I'd waited so long to hear those words, and now that they were here, I didn't know what to do with them. I'm pregnant, I said, as if he didn't already know. He nodded. I know. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't think anyone does, he said. We both laughed, a hollow sound, but it was something. Then he looked me straight in the eye and asked the question I wasn't ready for. Do you love him? I blinked. No, I whispered. Not the way I loved you. He nodded, absorbing the blow like he was bracing for it. And do you love me now? He asked, softer. I opened my mouth, closed it. I think I still love the version of you I married, I said. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. That version of me loved the hell out of the version of you that smiled at nothing and wore yellow because you said it made you feel like sunshine. We were both quiet. So much history in so few words. He stood up, walked to the door. I'm not here to fix anything, he said. I just needed to see you. The real you. Not the one I imagined when I was angry, not the one who betrayed me. Just you. And now that you have? He shrugged. Now I have a little less hate in my chest, and maybe that's something. As he opened the door to leave, I stood. Mark. He turned. Do you want to know the truth? I asked. He nodded. I would have left too, if it were you. He nodded again, slowly. There was something like respect in his eyes. Or maybe it was grief. I know, he said. That's why I'm trying not to hate you. Then he left. The door closed behind him. And I stood there, alone again. But for the first time, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt earned. I moved Mark's shoes out of the hallway. Not in anger, not as some dramatic declaration of independence. I just needed the space to belong to me again. I boxed up the shirts he'd left behind, folded them carefully, labeled them Mark in quiet handwriting. I didn't cry. I didn't break. Sometimes strength doesn't feel like a roar. Sometimes it's just the way your hands stop shaking when you pack away the past. Tyler still came by. Not every day. Not with flowers, not with expectations. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. He was present. But I had learned the hard way that presence doesn't equal permanence, and love isn't always the right reason to stay. One afternoon, as the leaves began to change outside, I asked him a question that had lived in the back of my throat for weeks. If I had chosen you, would we have made it? He looked at me for a long time before answering. I think we would have tried, he said, and maybe that's enough. But maybe it isn't. Honest, quiet, the kind of answer you give when you've stopped pretending you can save someone. I was 5 months along when I felt the first kick. I'd been sitting by the window with a cup of tea, reading a book I'd already forgotten. And then, a flutter. Not strong, but unmistakable. Life. Inside me. Something real. Something mine. I pressed my palm to the spot and closed my eyes. I'm still here, I whispered. To both of us. People started to notice. Strangers smiled. Neighbors asked. Coworkers offered congratulations without knowing the mess behind the miracle. I learned to say thank you without choking on shame. I learned to smile and mean it, even if only a little. One day, Mark sent a message, just one line, I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long time, and then I replied, I am. Because it was true. Not perfect, not healed, but okay. And sometimes, okay is a quiet kind of triumph. The nursery was simple, white walls, pale green curtains, a rocking chair by the window. I painted it myself, one stroke at a time. I didn't play music, didn't invite anyone to help. I let the silence keep me company. And in that silence, I realized something. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't waiting for someone to come home to me. I was home. She came early. Not dangerously so, just enough to catch me off guard. Enough to make me drop my grocery bags in the middle of the kitchen and whisper, oh God, it's happening, to no one but the fridge. Tyler was the one I called. Not because he was the father, not because I loved him, but because he came when I needed him. Always had. He didn't ask questions. He just said, I'm on my way. The hospital smelled like bleach and something floral I couldn't place. The pain wasn't cinematic, no screaming down hallways or dramatic pushing with a wet brow and tearful climax. It was slow, real, raw, the kind of pain that reminded you life never comes easy, not the life you carry, and definitely not the life you live. Tyler stayed in the room. He didn't hold my hand, but he sat in the corner, still and silent, eyes never leaving mine when it got too hard to breathe. The nurse asked me if he was the father. I nodded. He was, in the simplest, most complicated way possible. She came at 3:42 in the morning, pink, squalling, so impossibly small it made my heart ache. They placed her on my chest and everything stopped. The noise, the fear, the guilt, gone. Just her, warm, new, real. I cried, not the kind of tears that shake you apart, the kind that melt you back together. I looked down at her and whispered the first words she ever heard from me. I'm sorry, and I love you. They asked for a name. I hadn't told anyone yet, not Tyler, not Mark, only myself, late at night, curled on the couch, whispering it to the ceiling like a promise. Her name is Lily. Soft, simple, like something that blooms in silence. Tyler kissed my forehead before he left that morning. You're going to be amazing, he said. I didn't know if he meant as a mother or just as a woman who survived herself. but I nodded, because I wanted to believe him. Lily slept curled in the crook of my arm that night. I watched her chest rise and fall over and over again. She looked like peace. Like everything I'd broken was somehow stitched together in this tiny human's heartbeat. I wasn't healed, but I was here. Mark didn't come to the hospital. I didn't expect him to, but 3 days after we got home, a letter arrived. His handwriting, no return address, just one sheet of paper. It said, "I don't know how to forgive you yet, but I saw her photo, and she's beautiful. Maybe one day, when we're both less angry, we'll figure out how to raise her with a kind of love that doesn't need to be romantic to be real." I read it twice, then again, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I let hope sit beside me without guilt. It's been 7 months. 7 months of lullabies and late-night feedings, of tiny socks and spit-up and the kind of exhaustion that scrapes something primal out of you. But also, 7 months of grace. Lily laughs now. She has Mark's eyes, Tyler's smile, and my stubbornness. Sometimes I wonder if she'll ever ask about the space between all that DNA, about the marriage that didn't survive her, or the man who visits but doesn't stay for breakfast. But for now, she just coos and giggles at ceiling fans. She has no idea how many lies were buried before she ever took her first breath. Tyler sees her twice a week. He brings toys, books, sometimes flowers for me, though I never ask for them. We sit on the porch and talk about daycare and teething and how she likes Mozart more than lullabies. We don't talk about us, not anymore. Whatever fire once lived between us has cooled into something quieter, something respectful, necessary, a bond that exists because of her, and only her. And I'm okay with that. More than okay. Mark hasn't come over. But he sent another letter. This one was longer. Warmer. He asked about Lily's first word. It was ba, though it meant nothing. He said he's seeing someone, just started, said he hopes I don't hate him for moving on. I don't. I want him to be happy. Not out of guilt anymore, but because I know what it feels like to carry too much pain alone. And if there's one thing this child taught me, it's that life is too short to hold everything so tightly you forget how to breathe. There are still hard days, days where I walk past our wedding photo and feel something twist in my chest, days when Lily cries for hours, and I wonder if I ruined not just my marriage, but every version of myself that could have been better. But then she reaches for me, her tiny hand grasping mine like I'm the whole world. And for that moment, I believe I can be enough. I don't know if I'll ever fall in love again. I'm not looking. Love, I've learned, doesn't always arrive wrapped in romance. Sometimes it's a baby sleeping against your chest. Sometimes it's learning to forgive yourself at 3 a.m. Sometimes it's simply choosing to stay, even when everything in you once ran. I'm not who I used to be. But maybe that's the point. I'm not just the woman who cheated. Not just the wife who lied. Not just the mother who feared she wasn't ready. I'm all of them. And more. And still standing. Lily stirs in her crib. I rise from the couch, move to her side, and pick her up gently. She nestles against me, warm and soft and humming with trust. I kiss the top of her head and whisper, "I don't have all the answers, baby girl, but I promise I'll never stop showing up." Because in the end, after everything is gone, what remains is what you choose to build from the pieces. In the end, Emma didn't find closure in someone else's arms. She didn't get the fairy tale. She got something quieter, and maybe stronger. She learned that forgiveness doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it's the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening, the way you hold your child at 2 a.m., the way you show up again and again and again, even when you're tired, even when it hurts. We don't always choose the story that breaks us, but we do choose what we build with the pieces, and in that there's a different kind of love, one that stays, one that remains.